What happens when an undercover boss discovers an employee's deepest pain? When the truth unfolds, it's not just about business. It's about humanity, compassion, and the power of kindness. This is a story about a man who thought he knew everything about running a company, only to learn that the real strength of leadership lies in understanding the hearts of those who work for him. The story begins with a man named Darren Cole. Darren was the CEO of a thriving retail chain called Brightmart. He was a man of precision, discipline, and ambition. His days were filled with meetings, strategies, and numbers. He believed in hard work, efficiency, and results. But there was one thing Darren had forgotten over the years: the human side of his business. The people who made his success possible. The employees who showed up every day, rain or shine, to keep the wheels turning. One Monday morning, Darren sat in his office, staring at a report. Sales were up, profits were strong, but something felt off. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. That's when an idea struck him. He had heard of other CEOs going undercover in their own companies to see things from the ground up. At first, he dismissed it as a gimmick. But now, the thought lingered. What if he could see what really happened on the front lines? What if he could understand the struggles of his employees? It was risky, but Darren decided to give it a try. The next day, Darren transformed himself. He traded his tailored suit for a simple uniform. He shaved off his neatly trimmed beard and put on a pair of glasses. He looked like an ordinary man in his late 40s, ready to work an entry-level job. He introduced himself as Dan, a new hire at one of Brightmart's busiest stores. The store manager, a kind woman named Linda, welcomed him with a warm smile. "Welcome to the team, Dan. We're glad to have you here." Darren nodded, trying to blend in. He was assigned to work alongside a young man named Kyle. Kyle was in his early 20s, with a tired but determined look in his eyes. He had been working at Brightmart for 2 years, and it was clear he carried a heavy weight on his shoulders. As the days went by, Darren observed Kyle closely. The young man was always punctual, always polite, but there was a sadness in his eyes that Darren couldn't ignore. One afternoon, during their lunch break, Darren decided to strike up a conversation. "So, Kyle, how long have you been working here?" Darren asked, trying to sound casual. Kyle looked up from his sandwich. "About 2 years now," he replied. "It's not a bad job. Pays the bills, you know?" Darren nodded. "Yeah, I get that. Do you have any family around here?" Kyle hesitated for a moment. "Just my dad," he said quietly. He's not doing too well right now." Darren's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean?" Kyle sighed, his shoulders slumping. "My dad's in a coma. He had an accident a few months ago, and, well, the doctors say it's a miracle he's even alive. But the medical bills, they're piling up. I'm doing everything I can to help, but it's a lot." Darren felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected this. Here was a young man, barely out of college, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And yet, he showed up to work every day with a smile, doing his best to keep going. That night, Darren couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Kyle and his father. He thought about the countless other employees who might be struggling in silence. He realized that as a CEO, he had been so focused on the big picture that he had forgotten about the people who made it all possible. The next day, Darren returned to the store, but this time, he wasn't just Dan, he was Darren Cole, the CEO of Brightmart. He called for a meeting with all the employees. When Kyle saw him, his eyes widened in shock. You're the CEO?" Kyle stammered. Darren nodded. "Yes, Kyle. And I want to thank you. You've taught me something very important. You've shown me that behind every employee is a story, a struggle, a dream. And it's my job to make sure that no one has to face those struggles alone." Darren then announced a new company initiative. Brightmart would establish an employee assistance fund to help workers facing financial hardships due to medical emergencies or other crises. He also personally offered to cover Kyle's father's medical bills. Kyle was speechless. Tears filled his eyes as he shook Darren's hand. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say." Darren smiled. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being the amazing person you are. And remember, you're not alone in this. The employees erupted into applause, and for the first time in a long time, Darren felt a sense of fulfillment that no amount of profit could ever bring. As the weeks went by, Darren made it a point to connect with his employees on a deeper level. He learned their names, their stories, their dreams. He realized that leadership wasn't just about making decisions, it was about making a difference. Kyle's father eventually woke up from his coma, thanks to the best medical care Darren had arranged. The bond between Kyle and Darren grew stronger, and Kyle became an inspiration to everyone at Brightmart. He proved that no matter how tough life gets, there's always hope, and there are always people who care. The story of Darren and Kyle spread throughout the company, reminding everyone that kindness and compassion are the true measures of success. Darren had started his undercover journey to understand his business better, but he ended up understanding something far more important: the power of humanity. And so, the moral of the story is this: true leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. It's about seeing the struggles, hearing the silent cries, and being the light in someone's darkest hour. Because at the end of the day, the greatest success isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in the lives you touch. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Stories like these remind us of the power of kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or inspired you in any way, let us know in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to share this story with others. Sometimes, a simple act of sharing can make a huge impact. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We've got more heartfelt stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, kindness changes lives. See you soon.